I'm afraid to walk to my car alone in the dark. My dad calls us being paranoid, but last week, a man followed me for 5 blocks before I finally lost him in the sprint down the alleyway.
During the day, I lock the doors as soon as I get in my car. My guy friend doesn't understand why this is the first thing I do. I don't understand why this is something I have to do.
The first time I remember being catcalled, I was 10.
I was on my way to a children's theater production.
Which is to say,
The first time I was catcalled, I was a child.
I spent the whole night wondering if this was supposed to be a compliment.
My teacher tells me that this is how boys act when they like you. I don't want him to like me.
The walls of my high school are lined with girls whispering about their walks home last night, about who was catcalled and where, about who ran into creepy postcard dude on the corner of Randolph and Snelling, about how fucked up it is that we are having this conversation while the boys are talking about schoolwork.
The walls of my high school are lined with girls who don't remember last week's party, girls who are blamed for what happened at last week's party, boys who talk about how many girls they fucked, boys who screenshot Snapchats and circulate revenge porn, students who say everything and nothing at the same time, schools that say everything and nothing.
The sexual harassment policy at my school is shorter than the no dog policy. They'll call me a bitch if I bring this up.
The sexual harassment policy at my school hasn't been updated in 3 years. The dress code at my school is longer than our sexual harassment policy.
When a boy interrupts me, everyone's gaze snaps to him.
When I interrupt a boy, I'm told to raise my hand. To be quiet. How many times has a school silenced us?
Admins who say, we don't have a sexual assault problem, while the boys make rape jokes in class.
How many nights have I spent rehearsing what I would do if these boys ever got close enough to touch me?
How many nights have I spent praying to make it through the next day without missing class, without mascara staining my cheeks behind stall doors?
How many times have I held girls in bathrooms, their mascara mixing with foundation, knees pressed to cheeks, breath stuck in throat, and all I can do is say what the school won't. What the world won't.
At the end of the day, I walk past the 70-year-old men on my way to the bus stop. They're staring me up and down.
At the end of the day, I walk alone to my car. The starting shot of a whistle is fired, soles pound asphalt and fingers strangle keys. I'm just trying to get home.
When I talk to my female friends, I don't have to explain the fear.
Don't have to explain how similar high school hallways are to sidewalks.
We all know that these boys can do whatever they want.
We all know that rape culture doesn't start with us.
With women being murdered.
It starts in the classroom. It starts with the boys interrupting me in a class discussion.
The class says nothing.
It starts with a whistle.
The pavement says nothing.
It starts with silence. The world says...
Thank you, ladies, for sharing that piece and for ticking me off. Was that the intention? Okay, I'm supposed to ask, what is this poem? What is the poem about?
A lot of what we had talked about, like in the early stages of this, was like just street harassment and like the general fear of being a woman and like walking on sidewalks, and then it morphed into the aspect of how similar high school is to that, like with the boys interrupting us and all the disgusting things they say, and then it kept going into how like schools kind of continue this cycle. So like that's how I very much viewed it, is just like this continuation of harassment from sidewalks to classrooms to how it is continued. But do you have something else about it?
Yeah, and I think also like one of the important things that went into writing this poem is like we just had so many conversations about our experiences and like saw how much they overlapped, and then when we were bouncing ideas like off the group, how like people pointed out like who weren't women, like how that's like not okay, and we were kind of realized even like in talking about it how desensitized we are to it and how like normal it is. So I feel like that was a really big part to like point out these things that happen every day that women have to think about every day, and like how a lot of people, if you don't go through that experience, don't think about it.
Right. It generated so much. I was pissed off, I'm gonna be honest with you, as you guys were saying it, because I was like, yeah. Every time you mentioned a situation, but I also felt heard. because I was like, these young girls, I've ticked off because you're young and you're experiencing this. Like, did you guys, when you say you talked in your group, was there emotion in it? Was there, or were people just like, how were you able to put, I'm sorry, I don't have the words to ask this question. I apologize. My emotions have overcome. How were you able to put all of this in here? Was emotion a part of it? Like, or were you just venting, or if that makes sense? I'm so sorry.
I think, yeah, definitely emotion was a part of it. And like for us too, at least for me, a lot of it was just being pissed off and like, this is my life and I'm used to it and desensitized. And like what we kind of started with, because I had an individual poem, was I lock the doors as soon as I get in my car. My guy friend doesn't understand why this is the first thing I do, because that was like a legit conversation I had with one of my best guy friends. And I was like, you lock your car when you get in, right? And he's like, no, it automatically locks. Like when I start driving, there's no point. And just like that realization of how much as women we have to do to prepare for every day that men don't have to do. Right. So yeah, I was definitely like in the pissed off sense, and then also in a bit of a hurt sense, like this is the world. Right. That sucks, and like stuff's changing, and it also feels so stagnant to me.
Okay.
I exist in this world with the privilege of being a man and being safe, feeling safe in general. Going back and thinking about my high school period, even for me, it still felt imperative to find smaller spaces where I felt more comfortable than I might feel at my high school in general. Has doing poetry brought you into some spaces where you feel safer and more comfortable? And if so, why do you think that's the case? And if not, tell us as well.
Yeah, for me, that's definitely been the case. Really, just to have a place to go and talk about these things, and especially when I talk about them, to have people point out that that's like not a thing that should be happening is like so valuable for me. And just to know that there's a space that I can go that's safe and where people will listen.
I got one more question. When you were writing this, who were you talking to in your head? Were you talking to women or were you talking to men? Or were you talking to both?
I think for me, I was trying to do a decent amount of both. Like there's definitely, I think for the women, it's very much like seeing what shared experiences we have and like how that has shaped us and shaped how we go about our days. But also like, I love my team and the other 3 members are boys and our coach is a male. Mm-hmm. So there's also that aspect of like, I wanted with this poem to also show them like what we're experiencing. So I think there's also definitely, we talked about it, a balance with that, like how we're getting feedback by guys. And like, so that did come into play. And so it was a mixture of trying to act like this is all normal because it is, and also giving these examples that whether or not it's your experience, you can understand and have an entry point into this poem and hear us.
Thank you so much for sharing that poem and for being here tonight.